What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And today, well, we're still feeling the effects of that loss that the New York Giants suffered on Sunday afternoon, and we're frustrated. So we're going to vent some more frustrations and talk more about this Giants team, and in particular, this Giants coaching staff that's obviously under fire after a 33-point collapse on Sunday afternoon. In particular, we want to talk about Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, because yesterday, actually while we were recording, Alex, doing our reaction video to the Giants' loss, Brian Daboll spoke to the media and revealed he is not considering any coaching staff changes. Shane Bowen is safe and here to stay. And Alex and I both have some thoughts on that, and I know a lot of you do as well, so do make sure that you drop those thoughts down below in the comment section and subscribe to the channel if you're new. But let's go ahead and break it down, Alex. The Giants are maintaining Shane Bowen as a defensive coordinator. How are you feeling today? You still frustrated, I imagine, after Sunday's loss, and what are your thoughts on Shane Bowen having a job security?
I mean, I'm doing fine. Obviously, still thinking about how he could have won that football game and all the mistakes the coaching staff made along the way. But, looking at Shane Bowen's role in all of this, I don't think he is absolved in any way or form. I mean, look, your defense pitched 3 shutout quarters, and then you get to the fourth quarter and you give up 33 points. Like, do you understand how many points 33 points is? Like, the Giants didn't average that in 2 games last season. Like, that's an astronomical amount of production to have in a quarter. Your defensive play caller needs to make in the moment adjustments to limit those things, and your head coach needs to complement him with better decision making from a clock perspective and whatnot. So, is Shane Bowen having a job right now? Is that surprising? I mean, sure, but the question would be, what's the backup option? No good GM is sitting out there right now saying, yeah, I'll come save the day. You know what I mean? I'll come save you, Brian Daboll. No one's joining Brian Daboll's staff right now that has anything to gain. In fact, it probably is everything to fail, because you're going in midseason trying to change things. And then you have to look at internally, like Marquand Manuel. Do you have, Andre Patterson? Like, there's guys there, but none of them have experience. You know what I mean? None of them have experience calling plays and being a defensive coordinator. So that's concerning, right? That's like, there's no backup plan. There's no backup plan for this defense if it's not Shane Bowen. That's where the Giants kind of are right now. They have a coaching staff that is on thin ice, and no free agent is going to come here because of it. And the guys in backup positions don't have experience. So you're kind of stuck. You're kind of stuck if you're Brian Daboll, and you just kind of have to hope that Shane Bowen stops making the same dumb mistakes every single week. At this point, if I was Brian Daboll, I'd have my quality control, my assistants being like, if he tries to do this dumb shit, if he tries to do this again, tell me, and I will stop it. Brian Daboll has to take more control in limiting these bad moments. If he's not going to step in and do it, I don't think anything is going to get solved.
Well, I was reading today, I think it was Dan Duggan of The Athletic, but I can't remember which reporter shared it, but it was a quote not from this past game, but the game prior versus the Philadelphia Eagles, where Brian Daboll said after the game that he directed Shane Bowen to turn it loose. He told him to send the heat, to send those blitzes, which again is just further proof that Brian Daboll is involved in the game plan and has the wherewithal to say, or doesn't have the wherewithal to say, hey, we need to send heat when we're at the end of the game. He has the autonomy to tell Shane Bowen, drop 8, don't drop 8, and what to do in that situation, and he's not managing those situations properly. This is the second time this season that he's allowed Shane Bowen to drop 8, when clearly the entire lineup on the defensive side of the ball doesn't want to drop 8, and I don't even think Brian Daboll wants to drop 8, so why is he not preventing him from doing that? Why is he not preventing him from playing prevent defense? I don't really understand, because again, he certainly does have the power to prevent these play calls, and he's just not making the difference. And so that tells me he's probably in support of these play calls. He's probably telling Shane Bowen to do this, and it's backfiring every single time. So I just think that there's a clear disconnect between Brian Daboll and his coaching staff. I think that's always been the case when you think back to the Wink Martindale era. that Giants defense, they got after it in the fourth quarter. They sent heat and they brought the pressure and it delivered. That's how they won all those games, especially in 2023. Everybody loves to crap on Tommy DeVito for winning some meaningless games. The Giants had like a plus 13 turnover differential in those 3 or 4 games. The defense won them those games. Wink Martindale and his aggression won them those games. Since Wink Martindale left, the Giants have sat on their hands in fourth quarters. They haven't forced turnovers. They had the 31st ranked turnover forcing defense in 2024. This year, they're 26th. They're terrible at forcing turnovers, and it's because they don't bring any pressure. It's just an uber conservative sit back and let it happen defense. And that's why this New York Giants team keeps losing in these fourth quarters. Because what do offenses do in the fourth quarter, Alex? They bring the heat. They send all those extra plays that they didn't have dialed up through the first 3 quarters. And now the Giants defense sitting back allows it to happen. And the offense, with a rookie quarterback, you can't ask too much of it. You have to help them out defensively. And again, the Giants defense for 3 quarters was elite. It was the best defense in football for 3 quarters. And then that fourth quarter, they got way too conservative, way too comfortable with that lead, and they squandered it. And I just think that there's a disconnect between the way that Brian Daboll wants his team to look, the way that his coordinators want the team to look. I even think that's the case for Mike Kafka. The snip-snap between the play calling of Kafka in 2023, and then Shea Tierney had it, then Daboll had it, and then Daboll took it over last year. Now Kafka's back as the play caller. There's just a disconnect. Brian Daboll, in my opinion, doesn't have control over his coaching staff in a proper fashion, and he doesn't know what he wants his football team to look like. And that lack of a clear identity set from the head coach is what's creating a lack of identity on the field for the New York Giants, and it's what's causing them to have these mental lapses deep in the dying embers of these games. Quick pause to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Sleeper. Want to win up to 100 times your money on game day? Sleeper is the #1 sports app with real-time scores, lightning fast news, and daily fantasy picks that take just seconds. Choose more or less on your favorite player's stats, cash in fast, and even chat with friends while you play. Right now on Sleeper, you can get a free $20 entry, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users still also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Download Sleeper today and use promo code FIRESIDE for a 100% deposit match up to $100 and a free $20 entry. That's promo code FIRESIDE. Thank you to Sleeper for sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you said before that we look back to Wink Martindale's days and how he was so aggressive in those critical moments. We don't even have to go that far back. We could just go back to the first or second quarter. You know what I mean? The Giants were rushing forward. They were sending. I saw several cornerback blitzes. I saw several guys coming. I saw several stunts. I saw a little bit more creativity. That was definitely player influence, not Shane Bowen influence, because the players are now taking control and actually devising these game plans. And Shane Bowen can't be trusted. He's just kind of there. I watched a video of him trying to hype up the guys on the sideline, and I don't think a single person responded to him. Like, he was like yelling at him, trying to get him all hyped, and I don't think a single player even looked at him. So, you just kind of get the sense that the players don't really respect him. They took over the entire plan and strategic development of this defense so they could maximize their talent. The players are now the ones stepping in and trying to make things better. That's a big problem. That should be Brian Daboll's job, by the way. Brian Daboll's job should be to help Shane Bowen be better and elevate his defense, elevate his unit. But instead, the players are doing it. I mean, do I need to give more examples of why I don't think Brian Daboll is a good head coach? I don't think he does that much. I think he's just on during game days. It's not like he's making critical decisions. He's not calling plays on offense. He's not calling plays on defense. He doesn't manage timeouts well. He doesn't manage the clock well. What does he do well? What does Brian Daboll do well? I mean, he gets along with the players maybe, but aside from that, I don't see what he's doing. There's no tangible impact that I can see visually. So, unless someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to hear more about this specifically. The defense continues to make the same mistakes. It's the head coach's job to address those and make sure it doesn't happen again. They keep happening again. Shane Bowen's not learning. Whose fault is that? Shane Bowen or Brian Daboll? I'd argue it's Brian Daboll. It stinks from the head down. So, that's kind of where I'm at with this. Looking at just the mistakes they made on that, they're dropping 8 into coverage. What had been working for you the entire game? Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon, Burns, rushing the passer. Just do what's been working. You don't have to get cute and conservative and play off ball or play man coverage. and drop 8 DBs, one of them being Bo Braid, who hasn't played the entire season. Like, what's the point? What is the logic behind changing what's working in the most important moment of the game when Bo Nix has been extremely inaccurate downfield? Okay, he takes a shot downfield. Make him make that throw. Instead, they gave him all the time in the world to find the guy he wanted to throw to, attacked Andrew Phillips, who had been struggling the entire game. At this point, I'm starting to think Shane Bowen might be an imposter, because it's like the logic behind these decisions is not only flawed, it's malpractice. And I can't sit here and act like Shane Bowen doesn't have a responsibility for this. He should be fired. The reason he isn't is because there's nobody else behind him with experience.
That's 100% right. And what's the Giants' alternative plan, you might ask? If they do fire Shane Bowen, the only alternative that they have, truthfully, is to promote defensive backs coach Marquand Manuel to the defensive coordinator position. Marquand Manuel is the passing game coordinator. But the reason why I don't want the passing game coordinator taking over as the defensive coordinator is because the Giants' defensive pass coverage has sucked this season. So that's like the worst case scenario, is that the guy who's responsible primarily for the pass coverage takes over for the entire defense. Also, Alex, when you look at it, this secondary, everybody has gotten worse except for Cordell Flott. Let's take Cordell Flott out of the equation because he's been great and he is blossoming this season, and credit to him. We should probably do a whole episode just talking about him and some of these other guys playing their asses off in contract years. Illuminor, Wan'Dale Robinson, the list goes on for the Giants, and that's definitely an encouraging sign. However, take Cordell Flott out of it. Deonte Banks has gotten worse. Javon Holland has gotten worse. Paulson Adebo has gotten worse. Drew Phillips leads the league in penalty yardage, has gotten worse. The whole secondary has regressed. What we saw this past offseason, Giants fired Jerome Henderson, respected defensive backs coach. Basically, when they had the finger pointing going down this offseason, and they were saying, hey, our defense was broken, we need to fix it, they all pointed to Jerome Henderson, got him out of the building, and brought in Marquand Manuel. That has been a complete miscalculation so far this season, because the defensive secondary, everybody outside of Cordell Flott, has regressed. So maybe Jerome Henderson wasn't the problem. Maybe Shane Bowen's defense was the problem. And I think that's what we're seeing proven. Shane Bowen's defensive scheme does not maximize the talent that the Giants have in the secondary. He doesn't play to these guys' strengths. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I've said it a million times. Deonte Banks is not a man cover corner. Every time you see him get beat with his head turned to the football, that's because he's playing man coverage. He needs to play zone. The Giants constantly put him out there in man coverage. It doesn't make sense to me. But there's other instances and examples of players not being played to their strengths. How about when Tyler Nubin was playing deep safety for the Giants as a rookie for half the season? He is a box safety. He was primarily a box safety and a hybrid safety during his time at Minnesota. Last year, they tried to make him just a free, deep safety. That's not his role. So many times we see these players in the secondary get played out of position. It's one thing to point towards the defensive backs coach. There's only so much that guy can do. It's the guy who makes the scheme, who calls the plays, Shane Bowen. That's the guy who's really responsible for playing all these players out of position and not playing them to their strengths, and instead playing them so that their weaknesses become exposed. He is the problem with this defense. So again, Jerome Henderson, justice for Jerome Henderson. That was an unjustified firing. But nevertheless, I don't know what the Giants' next step would be if they did fire Shane Bowen. All I do know is, like you said, there's no clear alternative. That's one of the reasons that the Giants aren't going to fire Shane Bowen. The other one being because of Brian Daboll needing to save face. He's had way too many issues externally, publicly, with his coordinators. Wink Martindale resigning and taking coaches with him because they hated Brian Daboll. That is very well documented in public information. Mike Kafka having his play calling duties rescinded, then handed back, then rescinded, then handed back. That is very well publicly documented tension that occurred between Daboll and another one of his coordinators. Every single year, he has tension with his coordinators. It reflects poorly on the head coach, and that's why Shane Bowen is being protected by the head coach and why he still has this job. It's really, to me, the only reason. Because going into this offseason, John Mara made it clear. He said it in his end-of-season press conference when he spoke to the media. He said, I am tired of watching offenses run the ball up and down the field against this Giants defense. That's what the owner, John Mara, had to say. But nevertheless, they retained Shane Bowen. Mara teed it up for the Giants to go ahead and fire Shane Bowen. Instead, they retained him so Daboll could save face, and now here we are in Week 7 with a 2-5 record, and at least 3 of these losses are at the fault of this defense. It's malpractice, and I really think that it speaks to the level of incompetency that we're seeing, not just from the defensive coordinator, but from those above him as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the truth of the matter is there's talent there. You spent $100 million in the secondary. You spent a first-round pick on Deontay Banks. Cordell Flott's having a huge year. You spent $10 million a year on Carrick. You have one of the best defensive lines in football. There is no excuse with the amount of talent on this team to give up 33 points in a quarter, despite the fact that a couple guys got injured and we had backups in. And, Banks should be competent. That team, that was a catastrophic failure. It happens too often, though. We saw the offense do the same thing against the Saints, and then the defense obviously had some big problems. These things happen too frequently for them to be anomalies, right? That's kind of why I get just like a mathematical thing. They happen too frequently to be anomalies. And when you have catastrophic collapses and poor discipline and poor time management and poor this and poor that, when these things become consistent and these things become expected, it's a coaching problem, right? Any player could have a bad day, Anthony. Any player could have a bad week. Any player could have a bad month. But you can't convince me that these guys are having bad years. Plural, right? You can't convince me they're having bad years. This is a coaching problem. So, like you said, John Mara didn't want to see that. Well, he's watching it all happen all over again. This defense has the capacity to be really, really good. Really, really, really good. With a good defensive coordinator, and I think the Giants will get one at some point because there's no way in hell Shane Bowen lasts this season. They need to go out, and here's the problem, though, Anthony. Here's the problem. If you're John Mara and you don't fire Brian Daboll, he's still on the hot seat, right? He's still on the hot seat. They're just keeping him for Jackson Dart, basically. The reason that they got Shane Bowen, and that was the guy they ended up with, is because nobody wanted to join a sinking ship. Nobody wanted to latch themselves to this. Shane Bowen was the last person on the list, the very last option the Giants wanted. I mean, he probably knew that too, right? So that's kind of where you look and say, okay, if the Giants don't fire Brian Daboll, they're not going to be able to get good coaches. Nobody's going to want to come here with Brian Daboll as the head coach. That's the reality. So I would argue right now it is just a matter of time before Daboll gets fired. I'm not saying that I want that to happen. I think it's certainly justified, but they can't get good coaches if the head coach you're going to be coaching under is on the hot seat already. Right? Because then your job is, you're going into a job, you're moving your family, you're moving your career, everything, you're upending your whole life for a guy who could be gone in a couple weeks. And then a new guy comes in and wants to bring in their own people. So the actual trickle-down effect of that needs to be very clear. The Giants will not get good coaches until Brian Daboll is fired because someone else has to come in and promise job security for at least a few years. No one's coming in here with a promise of maybe a couple weeks. So I think that's the epitome of this situation, and now we can move on to positive thoughts.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to move on to positive thoughts. There are a lot of positives to draw from that loss. I mean, listen, it was an ugly loss. It was a nightmarish loss. But the rookie quarterback looked good. The rookie running back looked good. Some of these guys in contract years, like I mentioned, Cordell Flott, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jermaine Illuminor, they looked great. So there are some positives to take away from that game, and we will take those away in tomorrow's edition of Fireside Giants. But, I just closing thoughts on this Shane Bowen situation. I just wish the Giants would rip the Band-Aid off. I wish they would fire him and find somebody internally who can step in for the rest of the season, because we have seen the potential of this defense. We just saw it last week, Alex, versus the Philadelphia Eagles. They shut down Saquon Barkley. They made Jalen Hurts look like a plumber. They absolutely embarrassed the Philadelphia Eagles offense on primetime. That was the full potential of this Giants defense demonstrated on Thursday Night Football. And then the following week, fell flat on their face after 3 quarters of solid ball. They pretty much played 7 quarters of consistent elite football, and then that 8th quarter, it all fell apart. That's unusual. It's not the first time it's happened either for the New York Giants defense under Shane Bowen, and that's why you have to point fingers to him and ask him, what are you doing? But again, we saw the full potential of this defense in Week 6 versus the Eagles. I hope to God we see it full potential once again in Week 8 versus the Eagles. But knowing that potential is there, it just confuses me how it gets messed up. It can't be that hard to get that version of that defense on a consistent basis, because there is clearly an abundance of talent on the defensive side of the ball for the New York Giants, particularly on the defensive line. Well, why can't we turn them loose? Well, why can't we figure out how to make them consistently play at a high level? We said it going into the season, Alex. This defense has too much talent for this to be a 5-win team or a 3-win team, right? They should be better because that defense is so stacked. The one thing that we said that had us afraid, that we thought could potentially hold back that defense, was coaching. We questioned, is Shane Bowen competent enough to maximize this defensive lineup? So far, we're getting our answer, and the answer has been no. We've only seen one game and 3/4 of another game where the potential of this defense has been maximized.
Not surprised at all. We said it all, like you said. We said it all offseason. The only thing that can derail this defense is Shane Bowen. And what do you know? I mean, like I said yesterday, why are content creators seeing this before the fucking team? Why are YouTubers seeing this team more clearly than the actual people running it? Maybe it's because we're objective, maybe. But, like, anyone with half a brain could have seen this coming, that Shane Bowen was going to hold back a defense that has elite talent scattered across the board, right? Like, that's not our jobs, but it's obvious, you know? So, like, until John Mara makes the decision, like, I see it too. We can't sustain this. We can't, this cannot be our standard. Nothing will change. Nothing will change. The players can't rise above the coaches to a degree that makes them, like, it buries the coach. The coaching, the play calling, the decision making is going to shine through, and it's going to shine through, Anthony, in the most important moments when they have to make the biggest decisions. Because bad coaches make bad decisions, right? And when things get hard, things get difficult, some of your players are injured, you don't have some guys you have to make, then it's no longer on the players, it's on the coaches to make the decisions. They consistently make the wrong ones. So please don't let content creators be right. That's wrong. We shouldn't be right all the time. We should be on the outside looking in, saying, okay, like, you know, we're right way too often, Anthony, for this to be real. You know, we're right way too often. Maybe we're just good at what we do, but I'd like to think maybe they're just bad at what they do. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. We hope that they can get some better decision makers in there.
Yes, we do. All I want is for the Giants to be a good winning football team. It's all I want. Like, literally all I want in life is to watch the New York Giants be a consistently good winning football team. But nevertheless, that's been a real challenge for them. But hey, trade deadline around the corner, only a couple of weeks away. The Giants, once again, 2-5, still in the division. They beat Philadelphia next week. They're 3-5, and the division lead is 5-4 then at that point. So they'll be fully, or 5-3 it would be. So they would just still be 2 games back, and they would have the tiebreaker over the team leading the division. So they're still in the race. And that will be the positive note that I end this on. I hope that the Giants defense can figure it out next week against the Eagles like they did last week against the Eagles, and maybe we can get back on track. It's been a roller coaster season, a lot of ups and downs. Let's see where we go next. I'm excited to break it down for you guys, though, nonetheless, here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.